Like, share, and subscribe because it is free. The crimson warning lights bathed the crystalline halls of Zephyrian Prime in blood-red shadows as Admiral Kethvar's scaled hands trembled over the holographic display. 12 systems. 12 entire star systems had fallen in 14 standard cycles, their quantum-shielded defenses crumbling like sand before an enemy that defied every principle of civilized warfare. Impossible! General Voxhi's chitinous mandibles clicked in rapid succession, a nervous habit that betrayed the Krillian's typically stoic demeanor. His forearms gestured at the tactical readouts floating between them. Our battle algorithms predicted a 97.3% success rate for the Altair defense grid. The quantum disruptors should have neutralized any threat before it breached the outer perimeter. Commander Zilthek's translucent form rippled with agitation, the Nexary's gaseous body barely contained within his environmental suit. The reports make no sense. Energy readings suggest primitive kinetic weaponry, yet our adaptive shields registered complete penetration. How does solid matter overcome quantum field technology? Kethvar's tail lashed behind him as he manipulated the hologram, zooming in on the wreckage of what had once been the mighty fortress world of Kepler 442b. For 3,000 years, the Zephyrian Naval Academy had taught the same fundamental principles. Warfare was mathematics, victory belonged to superior intellect, and barbarism had no place among the stars. The smoking ruins before them challenged everything they believed. Perhaps our equipment malfunctioned, Voxhi suggested, though his tone carried little conviction. Cascade failures in the quantum matrix could explain the shield penetration. Across 12 different systems? Using different manufacturers and power sources. Zilthek's form darkened to a deep purple, the Nexary equivalent of skepticism. The probability of synchronized failures across our entire defensive network approaches zero. The three military leaders had gathered in the most secure facility in known space, surrounded by walls of compressed neutronium and protected by reality distortion fields that could withstand supernovas. They represented the apex of galactic military might, the Zephyrian hegemony with their unbreakable energy shields, the Krillian swarm with their perfect battle algorithms, and the Nexary collective with their instantaneous quantum communication networks. Together, they had maintained peace through superior firepower for millennia. "Show me the Vega engagement again," Kethvar commanded, his serpentine features hardening with concentration. The hologram shifted, displaying the final moments of the Vega system's collapse. The defending fleet had positioned itself in perfect formation, a textbook deployment that maximized overlapping fields of fire while minimizing exposure to enemy weapons. Their quantum disruptors had charged according to protocol, targeting solutions calculated to disable rather than destroy, maintaining the civilized standards that separated them from the chaos of primitive species. Then the enemy had arrived. Analyzing vessel configuration, Voxhi muttered, his secondary arms working frantically at his personal datapad. Crude armor plating, chemically propelled projectiles, and what appears to be, are those nuclear fission warheads? How barbarically inefficient. The enemy ships moved wrong. Where civilized vessels glided with mathematical precision, these craft jerked and weaved in patterns that made no strategic sense. Their weapons blazed continuously rather than firing calculated bursts, wasting energy with reckless abandon. Most disturbing of all, they seemed to prioritize aggressive positioning over defensive formations, as if survival was less important than dealing damage. Here, Zilthek highlighted a section of the recording. Watch the enemy's response to our surrender protocols. The Zephyrian fleet commander's transmission played back, his voice calm and professional. Unknown vessels, you are outmatched by a factor of 4.7 to 1. Our battle computers indicate a 73.2% probability of your complete destruction within 47.3 minutes. Surrender now and we guarantee safe passage for your civilian populations. The enemy response came back immediately, crackling with static and interference that suggested primitive communication systems. This is Captain Sarah Chin of the Terran battleship Indomitable. We don't surrender. We don't retreat. And we sure as hell don't negotiate with invaders. All ships, weapons free. Terran. Kethvar's crest flared in confusion. I've never heard of this species. Voxhai, check the galactic database. The Krillion's mandibles clicked rapidly as he accessed the vast repository of known civilizations. Partial match found. Sol system, third planet, recently achieved faster-than-light capability. Designated pre-contact species, technological level approximately 2.3 on the Kardashev scale. They shouldn't be capable of interstellar warfare. Yet here we are, Zilthek observed grimly, watching them systematically dismantle our most advanced defenses. The battle footage continued, showing the impossible unfold in real time. The Terran ships absorbed quantum disruptor blasts that should have disabled their engines instantly. Their kinetic weapons, laughably primitive by galactic standards, somehow penetrated energy shields that had never failed before. Most shocking of all, when the Zephyrian flagship's shields finally collapsed, the enemy had continued firing until nothing remained but debris. They destroyed everything, Voxhai whispered, his voice filled with something the galactic military hadn't felt in centuries: fear. No attempt to capture prisoners, no concern for salvageable technology, no regard for the surrender protocols. They fought until there was nothing left to fight. This is clearly some kind of malfunction in our equipment, Kethvar insisted, though his tail had stopped lashing and now coiled tightly around his legs. No species conducts warfare like this. It's inefficient, wasteful, and completely irrational. 12 systems would suggest otherwise, Zilthek replied, his form now shifting to the pale yellow of deep concern. Whatever these Terrans are, they've identified weaknesses in our defensive doctrine that our own analysis missed. The war room fell silent except for the hum of quantum processors calculating scenarios that no longer made sense. For 3 millennia, galactic warfare had been conducted according to established principles. Overwhelming technological superiority led to swift victory. Casualties were minimized through precise application of force, and defeated enemies were treated according to the galactic conventions of war. The system worked because it was logical, efficient, and predictable. These Terrans had ignored every convention, violated every principle, and somehow emerged victorious against impossible odds. It doesn't matter, Kethvar finally declared, his voice carrying the authority of a commander who had never known defeat. Whatever primitive tactics they're using, whatever equipment malfunctions allowed their success, we'll adapt. I'm ordering the first hegemony fleet to the Sol system. 200 ships, our most advanced technology, commanded by officers who've studied warfare for longer than this species has possessed fire. The probability matrices support this approach, Voxhai agreed, his confidence returning as familiar mathematics reasserted control. Even accounting for unknown variables, our technological superiority provides a 94.7% probability of success. These humans will learn why we rule the galaxy, Kethvar continued, his crest now fully extended in displays of dominance. They may have caught our outer defenses off guard with some clever trickery, but they've never faced the full might of a coordinated galactic response. Their crude weapons will shatter against our finest shields, their primitive tactics will crumble before our superior algorithms. Zilthek's form brightened to confident gold as the familiar rhythms of military planning took hold. I'll coordinate quantum communication arrays to ensure instantaneous tactical updates. No more surprises, no more equipment failures. We'll document every aspect of their defeat for the military academies. The 3 commanders separated, each returning to their respective fleets with renewed purpose. They had convinced themselves that the impossible victories were flukes, that superior technology would inevitably triumph over primitive aggression. Their worlds had known only calculated warfare for millennia, conflicts decided by computer models before the first shot was fired. None of them considered that somewhere in the darkness between stars, the crew of the Terran battleship Indomitable was preparing for the kind of war their species had been fighting since they first picked up rocks and clubs in ancient caves on a small blue world they called Earth. The void around Proxima Centauri shimmered as 200 of the galaxy's most advanced warships dropped out of hyperspace in perfect formation. Admiral Kethvar watched from the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dominion, as his fleet arranged itself in the classical hegemony battle pattern. Energy shields hummed to full power while quantum disruptors charged with lethal precision. Target acquisition complete, reported his tactical officer, scales rippling with satisfaction. Enemy vessel detected at coordinates 347.2 by 891.6. Single ship, approximately 2 kilometers in length. Primitive armor configuration, multiple kinetic weapon emplacements visible. Kethvar's serpentine form coiled with anticipation. One ship. These barbarians had sent one crewed vessel against the finest fleet in galactic history. Open a channel. Let's end this farce quickly. The transmission broadcast across all frequencies, carrying the weight of 3,000 years of military tradition. Unidentified vessel, this is Admiral Kethvar of the First Hegemony Fleet. You are outnumbered 200 to 1. Our battle computers calculate a 99.97% probability of your destruction within 12.3 minutes. Surrender immediately and we guarantee safe passage for any civilian populations in your system. Static crackled back, harsh and primitive compared to their crystal-clear quantum communications. Then a voice, distinctly female and utterly calm. Admiral, this is Captain Sarah Chen of the US Indomitable. Your math's probably right, but you're missing something important. We're not here to win pretty. We're here to hurt you so bad that every other fleet you send will think twice. All hands, battle stations. Today we show these bastards what humans do to invaders. Kethvar's crest flattened in confusion. Did she just refuse a mathematically certain surrender? Officer, verify the translation matrix. Translation confirmed, Admiral. They appear to be embracing certain destruction. The human ship moved like a predator awakening. Where hegemony vessels glided with elegant precision, the Indomitable lunged forward with brutal acceleration that should have liquefied its crew. Chemical thrusters blazed alongside some kind of exotic matter drive, creating an erratic flight pattern that made targeting solutions nearly impossible to calculate. Open fire, Kethvar commanded. Disable their engines only. I want to study this madness. Quantum disruptors lanced out in perfect formation, energy beams designed to selectively shut down specific systems without causing casualties. The beams struck the human vessel's hull and did nothing. The armor simply absorbed the energy, glowing cherry red but maintaining structural integrity. Impossible, whispered the tactical officer. Our disruptors can penetrate any known shielding. What kind of material are they using? Something called depleted uranium, reported the sensor operator, mandibles clicking frantically. Incredibly dense, radioactive, and apparently designed specifically to absorb energy weapons. Admiral, they built their ship to counter our primary armament. The Indomitable's response was immediate and devastating. Kinetic projectiles erupted from dozens of weapon ports, each round accelerated to significant fractions of light speed. The hegemony fleet's shields, calibrated to deflect energy weapons, offered minimal resistance to solid matter moving with such velocity. Shields down to 60% on the Eternal Vigilance. Came the panicked report from Admiral Kethvar's left flank. These projectiles are punching straight through our defensive matrix. More disturbing than the weapons themselves was their deployment. Where civilized warfare called for precise, calculated strikes, the humans fired in continuous barrages that lit up space like a festival of destruction. They wasted ammunition with reckless abandon, saturating entire sectors with overlapping fields of fire. They're not trying to disable us, Kethvar realized with growing horror. They're trying to kill us all. The human ship's communication channel crackled to life again, this time broadcasting what could only be described as a war cry. Come on, you alien bastards. My great-grandfather killed Nazis, my grandmother fought in the Martian Rebellion, and my mother died at Kepler Station. You think 200 ships scare a species that's been killing each other for fun since before you discovered fire? Nuclear missiles began launching from the Indomitable's torpedo tubes, crude fusion warheads that no civilized species had used in millennia. The hegemony point defense systems, designed to intercept sophisticated energy weapons, struggled to target such primitive threats. Several warheads detonated against the outer screens, their raw destructive force overwhelming delicate quantum matrices through sheer brute energy. Admiral, The Crimson Authority is reporting critical damage to their quantum core, his communications officer announced, voice shaking. They're requesting permission to withdraw. Negative. Maintain formation. But even as Kethvar gave the order, he watched in disbelief as the human ship performed a maneuver that violated every principle of space combat. The Indomitable rotated on its axis while maintaining forward momentum, bringing its heaviest weapons to bear while using its bulk as a shield for damaged sections. "Sir, they're launching smaller craft," the tactical officer reported. "Appears to be fighter squadrons?" "Admiral, these vessels are piloted. They're putting organic beings inside ships barely larger than escape pods." The human fighters moved like insects defending a hive, their pilots pushing acceleration limits that should have been fatal. They swarmed around the larger hegemony vessels, too small and fast for the capital ship weapons to target effectively, launching guided missiles at point-blank range. "This is madness," Kethvar breathed, watching his perfectly ordered battle plan dissolve into chaos. No rational species commits suicide attacks. No sane commander risks individual lives for marginal tactical advantage. Captain Chen's voice cut through the battle noise again, now strained with exertion but still defiant. "You want to know the difference between us and you? You fight wars with computers. We fight wars with hate. You calculate acceptable losses. We accept unacceptable losses. You think warfare is chess. We know it's a knife fight in the dark where the winner is whoever's willing to bleed more." The Indomitable's hull was glowing white-hot from repeated impacts, sections of armor peeling away like molten skin. But the ship kept fighting, its weapons never stopping, its engines pushing beyond safety margins that would have terrified any rational crew. When the main battery fell silent, secondary guns continued firing. When those were destroyed, the ship began ramming maneuvers against vessels 10 times its size. "Admiral, we're receiving casualty reports from across the fleet," his communications officer announced, voice hollow with shock. "The humans aren't trying to disable our ships. They're trying to kill everyone aboard." "But why?" Kethvar demanded, his worldview cracking like fractured crystal. "What possible strategic advantage does total destruction provide? Why not accept our surrender terms?" The answer came from an intercepted human transmission, a conversation between Captain Chen and what appeared to be her weapons officer. "Captain, we're down to 20% ammunition and the reactor's redlining. Then we ram the biggest ship we can find," Chen replied without hesitation. "If we're going down, we're taking as many of these invaders with us as possible. Set course for their flagship. Full power to engines." "Admiral," his tactical officer screamed. "The human vessel is on collision course. Impact in 47 seconds. Kethvar stared at the tactical display, watching his doom approach with the inevitability of a natural disaster. The human ship, burning and broken but still fighting, had become a guided missile piloted by beings who viewed death as an acceptable price for victory. "All ships, emergency scatter," he commanded, abandoning 3 millennia of tactical doctrine in a single desperate order. "Break formation. Retreat to minimum safe distance." The proud formation of the First Hegemony Fleet dissolved into chaos as 200 advanced warships fled from a single enemy vessel crewed by beings who had already accepted their own deaths. The Indomitable passed through the space his flagship had occupied seconds before, its damaged hull trailing atmosphere and debris but its weapons still firing at anything within range. As his fleet retreated beyond the human ship's effective range, Admiral Kethvar realized that everything his species believed about warfare had just been proven catastrophically wrong. These humans didn't fight to win elegantly or efficiently. They fought to survive, and they were willing to pay any price necessary to ensure their enemies shared their fate. The communication channel crackled one final time with Captain Chen's voice, now barely audible over the sound of alarms and structural failure. "Tell your friends back home what you saw here today. Tell them that humans don't surrender, don't negotiate, and don't forgive. And tell them we're coming." The Indomitable exploded in a brief, brilliant star that illuminated the scattered remnants of the galaxy's most powerful fleet. In the silence that followed, Admiral Kethvar understood that his species had just encountered something far more dangerous than superior technology, They had met an enemy that viewed death as just another weapon in their arsenal. The intelligence center on Nexary Prime hummed with desperate activity as thousands of analysts pored over intercepted human communications. Commander Zilthek's gaseous form had darkened to the deep purple of profound distress as data streams flowed through quantum processors, painting an increasingly terrifying picture of humanity's true nature. Analysis complete on the Sol System historical databases, reported senior analyst Kexlin, her crystalline form flickering with agitation. Commander, these beings have been at war continuously for their entire recorded history. No period of galactic peace, no extended diplomatic solutions, no mathematical resolution of conflicts. Zilthek's form rippled as he absorbed the implications. Define continuously. 12,000 years of documented warfare, with active conflicts occurring somewhere on their planet during every single solar cycle. They have developed 847 distinct methods of killing their own species, including weapons specifically designed to poison their homeworld for centuries after use. The holographic display materialized around them, showing humanity's blood-soaked timeline. Wars raged across continents for resources, ideology, territory, and reasons that made no sense to galactic minds. Siege warfare lasting decades where humans starved rather than surrender. Battles with casualty rates exceeding 90% where the survivors continued fighting. Chemical weapons, biological warfare, nuclear bombardment of their own cities. This can't be accurate, whispered analyst Mordak, his scaled features pale with shock. No species could survive such continuous self-destruction. The mathematical probability of evolutionary success under these conditions approaches zero. Yet they not only survived but thrived, Kexlin replied grimly. Every conflict taught them new methods of warfare. Every defeat became a lesson for future victories. They don't view war as an unfortunate necessity to be minimized, they view it as natural selection applied to military doctrine. A new data stream activated, showing intercepted communications from the human fleet. Captain Chen's voice echoed through the chamber, addressing her officers after the Proxima Centauri engagement. People, what we just did was a textbook example of asymmetric warfare. We were outgunned, outnumbered, and outetched, but we won because we understood something they didn't. Sometimes the only way to win is to be willing to lose everything. Zilthek's form shifted to the pale yellow of growing comprehension and terror. Continue the transmission. Chen's voice continued. Every human child learns about Thermopylae, where 300 Spartans held off an army of hundreds of thousands. We learn about Stalingrad, where our ancestors fought house to house for months rather than surrender. We learn about the Warsaw Ghetto, where people with nothing but improvised weapons held off a mechanized army because surrender meant extinction. We don't fight wars to be elegant. We fight wars to survive, and survival means the enemy doesn't get to try again. Pause transmission, Zilthek commanded, his form now cycling through colors of deep analysis. Cross-reference these historical events with their military database. I want to understand what created this martial philosophy. The analysts worked frantically, quantum processors struggling to comprehend warfare doctrines that prioritized endurance over efficiency. The results painted a picture that challenged every assumption about intelligent life in the galaxy. Commander, Mordak announced, his voice barely above a whisper, they have contingency plans for fighting wars after their entire civilization collapses. Detailed instructions for guerrilla warfare, resource procurement, and weapons manufacturing hidden in children's textbooks, religious texts, and entertainment media. They've weaponized their entire culture, Kexlin added, her crystalline form now flickering between multiple colors of confusion. Their music contains military marching rhythms, their literature glorifies sacrifice for tactical advantage, their recreational activities simulate combat scenarios. They don't have a military separate from their civilization, their entire species is a military force. The hologram shifted to show human fleet communications intercepted during their advance toward galactic core systems. Officers discussed tactics with a casual brutality that made seasoned military analysts physically recoil. References to acceptable casualty rates that exceeded entire galactic populations. Strategic discussions about planetary bombardment delivered with the same emotional tone used for logistics reports. Sir, incoming priority transmission from Admiral Kethvar, announced a communications technician. The Admiral is requesting immediate psychological analysis of human combat doctrine. Zilthek's form brightened momentarily. Put him through. Kethvar's scaled features appeared in holographic projection, but the proud Admiral who had departed for Sol System was gone. His crest lay flat against his skull, eyes wide with something approaching madness. Zilthek, we need to understand what we're fighting. My beautiful fleet was destroyed by beings who treated their own deaths as tactical assets. How do you defeat an enemy that views annihilation as victory? We're analyzing their cultural databases now, Admiral. The preliminary findings are disturbing. Disturbing? Kethvar's laugh carried no humor. They have contingency plans for fighting wars in the vacuum of space using nothing but debris and corpses as weapons. They've calculated optimal crew ratios for sustained combat effectiveness after 70% casualties. They train children to manufacture explosives from household materials. This isn't a military force, Zilthek. This is an entire species evolved for warfare. The intelligence center fell silent except for quantum processors struggling to model tactical scenarios that violated every principle of rational conflict. How do you fight beings who view death as just another tool? How do mathematical models account for enemies who make decisions based on emotion, intuition, and pure stubborn refusal to accept defeat? There's more, Kexlin announced, her voice hollow with shock. We've intercepted human military training materials. They practice something called acceptable losses doctrine, where commanders are required to sacrifice portions of their forces to achieve strategic objectives. Not as a last resort, as standard operating procedure. The hologram displayed human military academies where young officers learned to calculate the optimal number of deaths required for various tactical outcomes. Scenarios where entire fleets were considered expendable if their destruction provided intelligence value. War games where victory conditions included the complete annihilation of one's own forces if it denied the enemy's strategic assets. How many of them are there? Kethvar asked, his voice barely audible. Mordak consulted his displays with trembling claws. Approximately 12 billion on their homeworld, with colonial populations totaling another 8 billion across 47 systems. But sir, that's not the critical number. What do you mean? Their military mobilization statistics indicate they can convert 93% of their adult population to combat effectiveness within one standard year. They don't maintain a standing army separate from their civilian population. Every human is trained for warfare from childhood. Zilthek's form had now shifted to the deep black of existential dread. 20 billion beings, each one trained to fight to the death rather than surrender. Each one viewing personal annihilation as acceptable if it advances their species' survival. Each one carrying the accumulated military wisdom of 12,000 years of continuous warfare. Sir, the communications technician interrupted. We're receiving reports from across the sector. Human fleets have appeared in 14 different systems simultaneously. They're not concentrating their forces for a single decisive battle. They're spreading out to maximize damage regardless of tactical disadvantage. Admiral Kethvar's image flickered as his transmission destabilized. They're not trying to conquer us, are they? They're trying to hurt us so badly that we'll never recover enough to threaten them again. Even if it costs them everything. Admiral, incoming human transmission directed at all galactic military frequencies, the technician announced. A new voice filled the chamber, older and harder than Captain Chen's but carrying the same implacable resolve. This is Admiral Marcus Torres of the Terran Defense Force. To any alien commander receiving this message, we know you think you understand war. You think it's about technology, tactics, and acceptable losses calculated by computers. You're wrong. War is about will. It's about who wants to win more than they want to live. It's about who's willing to pay prices that make victory more costly than defeat. We've been paying those prices for 12,000 years. The question you need to ask yourselves is simple. How much are you willing to lose to keep fighting a species that's already lost everything worth losing? The transmission ended, leaving the intelligence center in absolute silence. 20 billion humans, spread across dozens of systems, each one trained from birth to fight wars that their computers said were mathematically impossible to win. Each one willing to die if it meant taking their enemies with them. "Commander," Kexlin whispered, "what do we do against an enemy that views mutual annihilation as an acceptable outcome?" Zilthek's form had stabilized into the silver of grim understanding. "We pray they're willing to accept something other than our complete destruction, because we certainly can't afford theirs." The combined fleets of 3 galactic superpowers converged on the Tau Ceti system in the largest military operation in recorded history. 5,000 ships from the Zephyrian hegemony, 4,000 from the Krillian swarm, and 3,000 Nexari vessels formed a wall of destructive power that could sterilize entire star systems. Admiral Kethvar commanded from the bridge of his new flagship, the Absolute Supremacy, its quantum armor and reality distortion shields representing the pinnacle of galactic military technology. "Final approach to human defensive positions," reported his tactical officer. "Sir, they have 17 ships." Kethvar's crest flattened in confusion. 17? Confirm that reading. Confirmed, Admiral. 17 human vessels in loose formation around the 4th planet. Energy signatures suggest heavy modification to their original configurations. "They appear to be, sir. They've incorporated our own technology into their ships." The holographic display revealed the impossible. Human vessels bristled with quantum disruptors salvaged from previous battles, their crude hulls reinforced with Nexari force field generators and powered by what appeared to be modified Krillian fusion cores. Somehow, impossibly, they had reverse-engineered advanced galactic technology and integrated it with their primitive but effective systems. "How is this possible?" demanded General Voxhai over the quantum communication link. "Our technology requires decades of theoretical understanding to implement safely. Humans don't appear to care about safety margins." Commander Zilthek's response carried the weight of bitter experience. "Analyzing their modifications now. They've bypassed every safety protocol, eliminated all redundant systems, and overclocked everything beyond recommended parameters. Their ships should have exploded during the first power-up sequence." "But they didn't," Kethvar observed grimly, watching the human formation maneuver with lethal grace. "They made our technology work through pure stubborn refusal to accept that it couldn't work." The lead human vessel opened communications, broadcasting on all frequencies with the same crude clarity that had become humanity's signature. "Galactic fleets, this is Admiral Marcus Torres aboard the UES Retribution. You brought 12,000 ships to finish what you started. We brought 17. I like our odds better." "Admiral Torres," Kethvar responded, trying to inject diplomatic protocol into what felt like a conversation with natural disaster, "you are outnumbered 700 to 1. Surely you can see the mathematical impossibility of your position." Torres' laugh carried the sound of grinding metal and burning atmosphere. "Admiral, my grandfather was at the Battle of Luna where 300 human ships held off a fleet of 10,000 automated probes. My species has been fighting impossible battles since we learned to walk upright. The only difference between then and now is the size of the numbers. You cannot possibly believe you can achieve victory against such overwhelming odds," General Voxhai interrupted, his mandibles clicking with agitation. "Victory?" Torres' voice carried genuine amusement. "Admiral, we stopped fighting for victory the moment you attacked our colonies. Now we fight for cost. The question isn't whether we can win. The question is how much it's going to cost you to beat us, and whether you can afford that price." The human ships began moving, not in the perfect formations beloved by galactic military doctrine, but in chaotic patterns that seemed designed to maximize confusion while concentrating firepower. Their modified weapons began charging, energy signatures spiking far beyond safe operating parameters. "Sir, they're overloading their weapon systems," the tactical officer reported. "Those power levels will cause catastrophic failures within minutes." Unless catastrophic failure is the point, Kethvar realized with growing horror. "All ships, maximum defensive posture. These humans are going to turn their vessels into guided weapons." But the humans surprised them again. Instead of the expected suicide charges, They began fighting with terrifying efficiency. Their salvaged quantum disruptors fired in coordinated volleys that exploited gaps in galactic defensive formations. Their nuclear missiles, now guided by quantum targeting systems, found weaknesses in energy shields that should have been impenetrable. Most disturbing of all, they fought with the mathematical precision of their enemies combined with the relentless aggression of apex predators. "They're learning," Zilthek whispered over the command circuit. "In real time, during active combat, they're adapting to our tactics and turning them against us." The battle raged for 6 hours, 12,000 ships against 17, and slowly, impossibly, the galactic forces began to lose. Not through superior firepower or advanced technology, but through the simple fact that humans had integrated the best aspects of galactic warfare while retaining their species' fundamental advantage, the absolute refusal to accept defeat. When the UES Retribution finally exploded, taking 3 Zephyrian dreadnoughts with it, Admiral Torres' final transmission echoed across the quantum communication networks. "To any galactic commander listening, we just proved that you can be beaten. Your technology can be copied, your tactics can be learned, and your advantages can be overcome. The only question is whether you want to keep losing fleets to teach us new lessons, or whether you're ready to talk." The surviving galactic forces found themselves in an impossible position. They had numerical superiority, technological advantages, and strategic positions, but they faced an enemy that treated their own destruction as acceptable collateral damage for tactical education. Every battle taught the humans new techniques, every victory cost more than defeat, and every engagement demonstrated that humanity's learning curve was steeper than their casualty rate. "Admiral," came the transmission from his communications officer, "we're receiving a priority message from Galactic Command. All fleet commanders are ordered to establish communication with human leadership for negotiation proceedings." Kethvar stared at the tactical display where debris from both fleets drifted in expanding clouds of metal and atmosphere. In 6 hours of combat, the humans had destroyed nearly 2,000 galactic vessels while losing only 11 of their own. The mathematics were undeniable. At this rate of exchange, humanity would eliminate every military asset in the galaxy within 5 years, even if it cost them their entire species. "Open a channel to the remaining human vessels," he commanded, his voice carrying the weight of 3,000 years of military tradition crumbling into dust. Admiral Torres' replacement, a woman whose voice carried the same implacable resolve, responded immediately, "This is Captain Elena Vasquez of the US Indomitable II. Are you ready to discuss terms, or do you need another demonstration?" "We are prepared to negotiate," Kethvar admitted, the words tasting like poison in his mouth. "But here are our conditions: complete withdrawal from all human systems, reparations for colony damages, and establishment of a mutual non-aggression treaty. In return, we guarantee that human expansion will proceed at a measured pace, allowing for diplomatic contact before territorial disputes arise." "Those terms are surprisingly reasonable," General Voxhai admitted over the command circuit. Captain Vasquez's response carried a note of something that might have been humor. "General, we're not monsters. We're just very, very good at war. We'd prefer to spend our time building things instead of destroying them, but we'll destroy anything that threatens our survival. Your choice is simple: coexist with us, or discover exactly how much damage we can do before you finish killing us all." The galactic fleets began their withdrawal, leaving behind a fundamental shift in the balance of power. Humanity had demonstrated that technological superiority meant nothing against an enemy willing to pay any price for victory. More importantly, they had shown mercy when victory was achieved, offering terms that allowed their enemies to retreat with dignity intact. Within 1 standard year, human battleships patrolled the galaxy's shipping lanes, their presence alone sufficient to maintain peace between species that had forgotten how to fight wars they couldn't win mathematically. The sight of human vessels, crude and scarred but bristling with integrated galactic technology, served as a constant reminder that somewhere among the stars lived a species that viewed warfare not as a chess match between intellects, but as a knife fight in the dark where survival belonged to whoever wanted it more. The galaxy had learned to coexist with humanity not because humans were peaceful, but because they had proven beyond doubt that war with them was a luxury no civilization could afford. Peace reigned not through superior firepower or diplomatic elegance, but through the simple understanding that some species were too dangerous to fight and too valuable as allies to destroy. In the end, humanity's greatest victory was teaching the galaxy that sometimes the most terrifying thing about a warrior race isn't their willingness to die for their cause. It's their wisdom in knowing when death isn't necessary.